16 teams go home the moment the group stage ends, and the other 32 get locked into a bracket that decides, before a single knockout match is even kicked off, exactly how hard or how easy each team's road to the final actually is. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how that bracket gets built, how group position determines your opponent, how the 8 best third-place teams get selected out of 12 groups, and why a single result on the final day of the group stage can completely reshape a team's path to the trophy. If you appreciate this type of content, gently tap that like button. Let's get into it. Start with the group stage's actual job, because it's easy to think of it as just a warm-up before the real tournament starts. It isn't. The group stage exists purely to sort 48 teams down to 32, and to assign each of those 32 teams a specific seed and a specific position inside the knockout bracket. 12 groups of 4 teams each play a round-robin, 3 matches per team, and the standard 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, 0 for a loss system decides the final group table, with goal difference, goals scored, and a head-to-head rule used to break ties. The top 2 finishers in each of the 12 groups advance automatically. That's 24 teams locked in already. The remaining 8 spots in the round of 32 go to the 8 best third-place teams across all 12 groups, ranked against each other using the exact same points, goal difference, and goals scored criteria used inside a single group, just applied across all 12 third-place finishers simultaneously. This round of 32 is brand new. Every previous World Cup since the 32-team era began in 1998 went straight from a 16-group stage survivor field into a round of 16. 2026 is the first tournament where 32 teams advance out of the group stage instead of just 16, which means there's now an entire extra knockout round before the bracket reaches the stage fans are used to thinking of as the real knockouts. That one structural change has a bigger effect on the tournament than it sounds like, because it means every team that survives the group stage now has to win one more single elimination match than a 2022 qualifier did just to reach the final. It's an extra 90 minutes or potentially 120 minutes plus penalties of pure knockout risk stacked onto every single team's run, favorites and underdogs alike. Now here's how the seeding actually works, because this is the part that decides who plays who. Each of the 12 groups produces a group winner and a runner-up. FIFA's bracket template is built in advance, before the tournament even starts, with fixed slot numbers. For example, winner Group A plays runner-up Group B, and so on, so that the draw and the group results, not a live redraw after the group stage, determine the actual matchups. Group winners are generally rewarded with what's designed to be a theoretically easier round of 32 opponent, typically a third-place qualifier rather than another group winner or runner-up, while runners-up are more likely to be drawn against a stronger side. This is exactly why finishing first in your group instead of second matters enormously, even if both results technically advance you out of the group stage. The seeding rewards group winners with a marginally softer first knockout test and punishes a runner-up finish with a tougher one, before either team has played a single knockout minute. The third-place puzzle is the single most chaotic part of the whole bracket-building process, because it can't be finalized until every group has finished all 3 rounds of group matches. With 12 third-place finishers competing for only 8 knockout spots, FIFA ranks all 12 using points first, then goal difference, then goals scored, then a fair play points tiebreaker if it's still needed, and finally, a drawing of lots in the rare case nothing else separates 2 teams. The 8 third-place teams that rank highest across all 12 groups advance. The bottom 4 go home. And because this ranking can't be locked in until the very last group finishes its very last match, results in a completely unrelated group, played by teams that have nothing to do with your group, can directly determine whether your third-place finish is good enough to advance. To put a number on just how unstable that ranking is in practice, think about what it actually means to rank 12 separate 3-match samples against each other on a shared scale. A third-place team in one group might have played its 3 matches against genuinely weak opposition and racked up goals comfortably, while a third-place team in a different, much tougher group might have played outstanding football but only managed a draw and a narrow loss against 2 genuine title contenders. The ranking system has no way of adjusting for how hard a given group actually was. It only sees points, goal difference, and goals scored, stripped of any context about who those numbers came against. That means a third-place team that had the misfortune of landing in a brutal group can finish with a record that looks worse on paper than a third-place team from a softer group, and get eliminated on a technicality despite playing the tougher schedule of the two. Walk through a worked example to see exactly how this ripples outward. Imagine Group C finishes with a team in third place on 4 points, a positive goal difference, and 5 goals scored across its 3 matches. That team is sitting comfortably in qualification position for most of the tournament. But Group K, playing its final round of matches at the same time, has its third-place team net a last-minute winner that bumps their own group's third-place finisher up to 4 points with a better goal difference. If only 8 slots exist and the cutoff line falls between those 2 teams, the Group K team leapfrogs the Group C team in the third-place rankings, and the Group C team is eliminated by a goal scored in a match they had no part in and no ability to influence. This is exactly the kind of scenario that makes the final round of group matches across every single group must-watch simultaneously, because the qualification line for the third-place teams is a moving target until the literal final whistle of the last group match anywhere in the tournament. There's a deliberate design choice baked into how FIFA builds the bracket template that's worth calling out specifically. Wherever possible, the bracket is structured to avoid 2 teams from the same confederation meeting in the earliest knockout rounds, and especially to avoid rematches of group stage opponents. This isn't a hard mathematical guarantee. With 48 teams and the path third-place qualifiers take through the bracket, it isn't always fully avoidable. But it is an explicit goal of how the slots are assigned, both for competitive variety and so that, say, 2 European heavyweights aren't forced to eliminate each other in the round of 32, when a more spread-out bracket could let both advance further and produce a more dramatic, lucrative later-round matchup. It's also why the path of a third-place qualifier is intentionally one of the most unpredictable parts of the bracket. Which group's third-place finisher lands in which round of 32 slot depends on which groups actually produce a top 8 third-place team, something that isn't known until the group stage fully wraps. Whether this seeding structure actually protects the biggest favorites is a more complicated question than it looks. On paper, a group winner gets a favorable matchup against a third-place qualifier instead of another strong runner-up. In practice, favorable doesn't mean safe. Some third-place qualifiers are genuinely dangerous teams that simply had a tougher group draw than their overall quality deserved, and a favorite that finishes second in its own group because of one bad result can find itself facing a group winner from a brutal group, essentially inheriting a much harder draw than its talent level would suggest it deserves. The bracket rewards the literal table position you finish in, not how good your group actually was. A team that wins a weak group gets the easy third-place draw. A team that finishes second in a genuinely brutal group, sometimes called the group of death, can end up with a tougher round of 32 matchup than a team that was objectively worse but happened to land in a softer group. Group position decides your bracket path. It does not always correlate cleanly with how dangerous your actual draw turns out to be. Ties inside the group table itself have to be sorted before any of this bracket seeding can even begin, and the order FIFA uses matters enormously. First, total points decided. If teams are still level, goal difference across all three group matches is the next tiebreaker, followed by total goals scored. If a tie persists specifically between two teams who are level on all of that, the head-to-head result between just those two teams becomes the decisive factor. But if three or more teams are still tied after that, the head-to-head rule gets skipped entirely, and the table reverts to a mini-league calculated using only the matches between the tied teams. After that comes fair play points, a deduction-based tiebreaker tied to yellow and red cards picked up across the group stage. And only if every single one of those measures still leaves teams dead level does it come down to a drawing of lots, essentially a coin flip, to decide final position. It's an exceptionally rare outcome, but it exists specifically because the bracket cannot be built, the round of 32 slots cannot be assigned, and the entire rest of the tournament cannot proceed until every group's table is fully and unambiguously resolved. There's a scheduling detail that exists purely to protect the integrity of that third-place race, and it's easy to miss if you're not looking for it. The final matches of every group are deliberately scheduled to kick off at the same time as each other, group by group, rather than spread across different days. The reasoning is simple and has a real precedent behind it. If one match in a group finished hours before another, a team that already knew the exact result it needed could adjust its approach in a way that wouldn't be available to a team playing earlier in the day. And worse, two teams already through to the next round, regardless of their final match's result, could end up with a result that conveniently benefits both of them at a third team's expense. Synchronizing kickoffs removes that loophole entirely. Every team in a group plays its final group match with the exact same information every other team in that group has, and the third-place ranking across all 12 groups can't be quietly engineered by two teams agreeing, implicitly or explicitly, on a result that suits them both. That scheduling rule exists because of a real specific controversy from World Cup history that FIFA never wanted to repeat. At the 1982 tournament, West Germany and Austria played their final group match knowing in advance, because it had been scheduled earlier, exactly what scoreline would send both of them through at Algeria's expense. West Germany scored early, and for the rest of the match, neither team made any real effort to change the score, because the result already on the board eliminated Algeria regardless of what either of them did next. The match became infamous enough that it's still referred to using the host city's name as a kind of shorthand for a fixed, non-competitive result. FIFA's response eventually was to make sure that scenario could never be engineered again by mandating that every group's final round matches kick off simultaneously. It's a small scheduling detail buried inside the bracket building process, but it's there specifically because of one of the most cynical results the tournament has ever produced. It's also worth remembering that this isn't the first time the World Cup has experimented with a third-place qualification puzzle at all, even if the scale is new. The tournament briefly used a similar 14 group, multiple qualifier structure in 1982 and 1986, when 24 teams were split into 6 groups of 4, and the third-place teams from those groups had to be ranked against each other to fill out a knockout bracket that wasn't a clean power of 2. FIFA scrapped that exact wrinkle once the field properly settled into 32 teams and 16 automatic qualifiers from 1998 onward. Because a clean round of 16 needs 0 third-place tie-breaking at all. Going to 48 teams in 2026 means FIFA has effectively had to resurrect that older problem, just at a much bigger scale. 12 groups instead of 6, and 8 third-place qualifiers fighting for spots instead of a smaller handful. The puzzle isn't new. The number of teams involved in solving it is. Once the bracket actually starts, the rules around how a match can end change completely from the group stage, and that shift matters just as much as the seeding itself. In the group stage, a draw is a perfectly normal, valid result. Both teams collect a point and move on. From the round of 32 onward, a draw is not allowed to stand. If a knockout match is level after 90 minutes, it goes to 30 minutes of extra time, split into two 15-minute halves. If the score is still level after that, the match goes to a penalty shootout to produce a winner. There is no replay, no second leg, no aggregate score to fall back on the way there is in club competition. Every single knockout match, from the round of 32 all the way through the final, produces exactly one team that advances and one team that's eliminated on that day, in that match, with no mechanism to revisit the result later. That single elimination must produce a winner structure is what makes the bracket building process so consequential in the first place, because once it locks in after the group stage, there's no more averaging out a bad group stage result. Every remaining match is winner-take-all. So when you put all of that together, 12 groups producing 24 automatic qualifiers, 8 more decided by a constantly shifting third-place ranking that can't lock until the very last group match anywhere in the tournament finishes. A bracket template designed to reward group winners with a theoretically softer first knockout opponent, and a strict no-draws-allowed format from the round of 32 onward. It becomes clear that the single most important moment for any team in the entire tournament isn't necessarily a knockout match at all. It's the final whistle of their own third group stage match, and depending on what's happening simultaneously in every other group, sometimes the final whistle of matches they have nothing to do with at all. Win your group outright, and the bracket hands you a meaningfully different path than finishing second does. Slip into the bracket on goal difference as one of the 8 surviving third-place teams, and your entire route to the final was decided by results elsewhere on the same afternoon, in stadiums you weren't even playing in. None of this is incidental detail buried in a FIFA rulebook nobody reads. It's the actual mechanism that decides which 16 teams get eliminated before the knockout rounds even begin, which 32 survive, and which specific opponent each of those 32 teams is handed on the very first knockout match day. A casual viewer watching the group stage might see it as a series of warm-up matches building toward the real tournament. A team's coaching staff watching the exact same matches is doing constant live math, tracking not just their own group's table, but every other group's third-place race simultaneously, because their own group stage performance is only half of what decides their path forward. The other half is happening in stadiums they have no control over, on the same afternoon, often at the exact same kickoff time. That's really the core of how this tournament's bracket comes together. It isn't a random draw happening live after the group stage, the way some fans assume. It's a fixed template, locked in before a single group match is played, that simply waits to be filled in by exactly how each of the 12 groups finishes, and the 8 third-place teams, fighting over the bracket's last open doors, are the most chaotic, most simultaneously decided part of the entire process. It's worth sitting with how different this makes the final round of the group stage compared to literally any other stage of the tournament. Every other round of matches in the World Cup is judged on its own terms. Win, lose, or draw, the consequence is contained to that one match and that one group. The final round of group matches is the only point in the entire competition where a result's consequence can ripple sideways into groups that have nothing to do with it, where a goal scored in stoppage time on one continent's side of the bracket can reach across and eliminate a team thousands of miles away that's already finished playing. It's the single most interconnected moment the sport produces, and it happens quietly, inside what most casual viewers still think of as the easy part of the tournament. Every fixed slot in that bracket template, every theoretical advantage handed to a group winner, every chaotic third-place ranking that hinges on a goal scored somewhere else entirely exists for one reason: to take 48 teams and turn them into a single champion through a process that's fair on paper, but rarely feels fair in the moment a team is eliminated by an arithmetic tiebreaker instead of a result on its own pitch. And if you want to understand exactly why the teams everyone expects to come through that bracket keep finding ways to lose anyway, even with a seeding system designed to help them. I made a video on exactly that. You can check it out by clicking right here.